Welcome back to another edition of the Transfer Portal Gambling Podcast for Week 3, brought to you by No Context CFB. I'm joined, like I am every week, with my co-hosts Matt and Mike. Say hello, guys.
Howdy.
How we doing?
So we got a lot in store for you guys today. This is a huge week, a lot of ranked games, a lot of big conference games going on. And last week was not the best betting slate or not the best games to look at, but ended up being a super entertaining week. But moving forward, whole lot to talk about. We're going to go through all the big games and then give you our picks, our 5 picks that we do every single week: over, under, favorite, underdog, and of course our luck. And then we're going to send you off with an upset of the week and then our parlay or teaser before we get you guys on the road. But before we get started, this episode is brought to you by our friends at Homefield Apparel. Homefield is a premium collegiate apparel brand based in Indianapolis and are committed to creating incredibly comfortable, officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. Now, they've got a growing collection of over 150 colleges to choose from, including all of your favorite teams, with more being added every single week. And if you're new to the Homefield brand, if it's your first time buying from them, and you're a first-time customer, use the promo code PORTAL, PORTAL, for 15% off your first order. Now, that link is in the description of this podcast, the YouTube video, and also in that description, you can find all of our socials, where to find all of us, including this podcast, and our website, thetransferportalcfb.com, and our Twitter handle, tportalcfb. Now, diving into week 3, before we get into that, we got to cover a couple of things, do some cleanup for week 2. I gotta address my own personal elephant in the room. I am 0-3 on locks. All of us are under 500, so I'm gonna temper expectations a little bit. All of us are 7-9. We'll go over our overall records, but both of you guys are 3-0 on locks. I just can't seem to figure out which teams to be putting in my locks. But yeah, how do you guys feel about the slate last week and how you guys did? I'll start with you, Mike, because you had a little bit of a bumpier road last week.
Yeah, hot and cold for me. So 1-4 on week 1, 1-4 on week 3, 5-0 in week 2. So if anything's a trend, you guys want to ride this week.
Definitely
locks though.
Definitely, if you're gonna go 5-0 again next week, I might just parlay all your picks. So like it's gonna be plus 2,400, something like that.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
Yeah, whatever Mike puts down at the parlay section, just ignore that and just parlay every single other pick he does. But the other big story for our podcast of last week is, Matt, you actually made money betting Iowa scoring the football.
And I had no business doing it. They were up 4 at half. I looked at that halftime. I was like, oh, okay, so this is what I get. We're all gonna learn. I haven't learned yet.
No, you haven't learned yet. Me and Mike both took our lumps. You did not. They covered easily too. They covered, what was it, like 41 to 10?
Well, no, the spread was 28. They did not cover easily.
Okay. Okay, yeah, very fair. That's a big looking score, I guess. But no, yeah.
It was a 28-point spread, and they were up 14-10 at halftime. So like it was looking absolutely brutal. And then they were just 31 or 27-0 in the second half. Just didn't allow them to score.
I mean, Brian Ferentz just wants to keep his job.
He wanted that 325 so badly.
Oh man, but yeah. I didn't really have any bad beats of this past week. I guess the Iowa win is kind of the opposite of that. A good win for you, Matt. But any of you guys, I'll start with you, Mike. Any bad beats of the past week?
Yeah, not a terrible beat, but definitely a bad one. I was feeling really good about the Northwestern Duke under for the game. 38-7 going to the last minute of the game, and Northwestern scores a garbage touchdown to kill the under at 48. So that was my bad beat from last week.
I still had Duke minus 19 though, so I was easy riding for that one. But yeah, no, definitely. Matt, any bad beats of last week or?
Not really. Both of my losses last week were well, I thought I had 3 losses dead by halftime, and then Iowa turned it around. But my other 2 were just never close. LSU was never within 10 points of Mississippi State was never within 10 points of LSU. And I think my under went over by halftime. So that's never good.
I was pretty close on Georgia Southern. It just the game just kind of slipped away, and then I don't know why I was trusting in James Franklin to put up more points. I thought 48 for sure was going to be hit, or 48 and a half. with Penn State, Illinois, but that wasn't particularly close. I forget what the final score was, but that missed by a little bit. So wouldn't call that a bad beat. Just too much faith in my boy James Franklin. But no, moving on to some big games this week. We like to cover and talk about every single ranked game. A couple of them will probably be in a few of our picks, but we'll go through real quick what to expect and who we like. But out of the games, I think we got 6 ranked games this week. The first one, well, last one probably time-wise, but UCLA, number 22 at number 11, Utah. So, Matt, I'll start with you. How do you feel about this game?
Now that Dante Moore is playing, and I believe Nate Johnson's still in for Utah. If he's still in, I think UCLA has a chance. But if Rising's back, I think Utah wins this pretty easily. But
yeah, I think the line crept down to like what, 4.5.
It's around there, yeah. This actually isn't one of the later games. This is for me a noon game. For you guys a 3:30 game. But
gotcha.
I don't think any of the ranked games are on the late slate. I think it's all early afternoon and late afternoon.
Yeah, I wasn't sure because I was just going by order of how I see them pop up on the score, but I guess it's somewhat order of where these teams are ranked. But no, I do. If like Dante Moore, I think is going to be electric. We'll see if he puts it together right away. But if Cameron Rising's not playing, I was really debating having this be my upset pick, but I think I'm just going to straight up stay away. 4 feels like a trap line. But next game, huge game, because Alabama doesn't seem to know what they're doing at the quarterback position, and Jalen Milroe is back in, according to Nick Saban. But Alabama is hosting Ole Miss, number 15 Ole Miss, going to Tuscaloosa, number 13. Mike, how do you feel about this game? Are you taking this at all?
Yes, I am, and everybody will find out later. I love when Nick Saban plays pass assistance. I think it's fantastic, and I also love Alabama coming off some losses. So you guys will see that pick later from me.
Yeah, Saban against pass assistance is one of the better narratives and the kind of trends out there.
Yeah, I just seeing Alabama not being able to do anything. What was it USF last week? The beginning of that game was absolutely brutal because I mean they put in Buckner and then they went to Ty Simpson, just nothing doing. I mean Texas game, I saw Jalen Milroe firsthand. I don't really think he's the answer, but I think he's way better than those two, and he could use his feet, and they're probably just going to be able to run over Ole Miss a little bit. So I do like Alabama, but again, I'm probably staying away from this game. A game that I do have a pick on that I'll share a little bit later is Colorado visiting Oregon. Probably the most talked about game, mostly because of Prime, Deion Sanders, but huge game. But the storyline of the game is Travis Hunter being out. They haven't fully announced it yet, but they said about 3 to 4 weeks was the estimate. So you got to imagine he's going to be out, but Deion's turned the program around so far. Colorado's having a lot of fun, but Matt, how do you feel about this game? Colorado visiting Oregon.
I thought even with Travis Hunter, this was going to be like the kind of wake-up call for Colorado where, like, yes, TCU is ranked, but I think most people here kind of agreed that ranking was based a lot off last year and not really what this current team was. So, like, there was an upset, but they probably should have been in this game. Oregon's a good team. Oregon's a team that can contend for the Pac-12, and they especially with Travis Hunter, I think they're going to dog walk them.
Yeah, I think it's a 21-point spread. It's Oregon minus 21. But Mike, what do you think about this?
I'll start with last week was one of the more entertaining, if not the most entertaining game that was on. It was on late. I fault Colorado State for being kind of cowards late in the game and not going for 2. And you got to play to win that game. But you'll see them later on. I might be on the other side than you. Prime is for all the showy stuff he does. He's got these kids motivated, and they're disciplined. He's a damn good football coach.
And Shador's the real deal too.
Yeah, for sure.
He's
for sure.
good.
Yeah, arm and leg.
Like that 2-point conversion he had, where it looked like he was going to throw the wheel, but like misdirected with a guy in his face and threw it to the back of the line. That was one of the best like readjustments I've seen out of a college quarterback in a while. That was crazy.
Yeah, his awareness is fantastic for just joining the FBS, but also I just love he doesn't turn the football over, which is great. So to keep Colorado in games for a team that's traditionally an underdog. I think they tied their win total for the past 2 years already this season, which is absolutely hilarious. But yeah, no, that's probably going to be the most electric game, in terms of hype around it. One of the games that's probably going to be the least electric game in terms of ranked games, but definitely two fantastic offenses, Oregon State at Washington State. So this is a true Pac-12 game. Oregon State's offense has actually looked great, and they're just big and physical up front. And I mean, Cam Ward looks awesome too for Washington State. So, Mike, what do you think about this game? Do you have any feel on this? What are you thinking?
I like how you said true Pac-12 because I thought you were kind of being ironic because they're the last one standing. I'm intrigued by this game. Can DJ really answer the bell? Is Washington State's offense really this good? They put up 50 twice, I think, so far this year. So I think this game's more interesting than we're giving it credit for, just because, man, this is a damn good college football slate this week.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's so good. The next game, Iowa at Penn State. I know we, talked a lot about Iowa at the beginning of the show. That tends to be a little bit of a theme for us. I have some thoughts on this game in terms of some of my picks. Mike, I'm sure you're super confident in this game when they're visiting Happy Valley, but I'll start with you. How do you feel about Iowa coming to Happy Valley, take on James Franklin?
So it's the whiteout, and Urban Meyer says that's like 7 to 10 points in itself. But I also think there's been some bad blood from 2021 when Penn State went in there, and Iowa thought that they were faking injuries to slow down that offense, which was I remember that being a narrative. And that was brought up in James Franklin's press conference yesterday. So I think Penn State's gonna take them for a ride.
Yeah, I feel pretty confident about Penn State here. I mean, I'm sure I was going to try and put up points. I'm assuming they're going to, at the worst, put up garbage points. So, Matt, what do you think?
I agree. I think they're going to win. Penn State's going to win this pretty easily. Iowa is a ranked game, but this is the least ranked game ranked like of the 6 years. The other teams are significantly better than what Iowa offers.
Yeah, no, for sure. But moving on to the last ranked game of the weekend, probably the most exciting or biggest ranked game of the weekend is number 6 Ohio State visiting number 9 Notre Dame. This is kind of has become a little bit of a classic game, but last year this was a little bit of Ohio State's coming out party and a little bit of an exposure for Marcus Freeman and the Notre Dame team that went on to have a real big struggle at the beginning of the year before turning it around. This year Notre Dame's a little bit different. My dude Sam Hartman, I've been front line screaming that he's going to be in New York at the end of the year. This is the time to show it. I love Ohio State. I love their defense. I think their weapons are going to be able to help out their quarterbacks. They're still kind of doing the 2 quarterback thing, even though Kyle McCord is a little bit more the starter. But I really do feel confident that this is going to be a little bit of a shootout, but Ohio State might come back or might finish on top. But Matt, what do you think about Ohio State at Notre Dame?
I'm gonna have this one of my picks a little bit later, but I think this is just such a different team that Notre Dame is from where they were last year. Like they clearly have the better quarterback now, and it really isn't a debate at all. And the defenses that were more of a wash last year, Ohio State did improve their defense, but I think Notre Dame's defense is just as good as theirs. So I think with better quarterback play and similar defenses, I think Notre Dame takes this.
Okay, what do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I don't like the line here, so I think this should be a pick'em game, considering it's in South Bend. At the Horseshoe last year, it was 24-10 or something like that. That's a hard place to play. Now the tables are turned, and like you guys said, they're different teams. I don't trust Ohio State yet, but I absolutely will if they can squeeze this one out.
Yeah. And you mentioned the line. The line's Ohio State -3. And last year, I mean, I just kind of ragged a little bit on Tyler Buchner, and that was last year. I think that was the game he got injured in, and it was just a mess of an offense that they had. So I think Notre Dame, obviously, Matt mentioned, I think they're way better at the quarterback position, but their secondary is really good too. And I don't know. We'll see if they can hold down some of the weapons. But before we get into our picks this week, we already did a little bit of our review, but to cover, what we did last week, both Matt and I 3-2 with our picks. Only difference being Matt hit his lock. I did not, and I'm 0-3 on locks. Mike, the 1-4, same trend. We're hoping you can bounce back. But to go for our standings, where we stand for the entire season as a whole, tied for first, Mike and Matt, just showing me up. 7-8 records though, so we got to turn that around, boys. But both of you guys 3-0 on locks. I'm in third. I'm giving myself third because the consolation is our or not consolation, but the tiebreakers are locks, and I'm also 7-8, but 0-3 on locks. So I think an episode or two ago we were talking about how if we couldn't go 500, then this gambling podcast is in trouble. So I think this is the week we got to show out, and we got to get all of us back into the money. But if you're following along and you're doing some of our picks and some of our auxiliary picks, Mike and I both hit our parlays last week. Matt's hit his parlay the first 2, maybe 3 weeks, I believe. So yeah, we're going to be getting up standings shortly, hopefully by this Saturday for all of our picks, and then where we are at if you followed every single pick in terms of units plus or minus. So look out for that. Look out for our picks, our graphic coming out Saturday morning before all the games. But let's get to our official picks. We'll start with the over, like we do every week. I'm going to go to you, Matt, first. What's your favorite over of the week?
This is a number that I'm surprised is this low, especially for a action game with Ohio at Bowling Green at 44.5, because I believe Rourke should be back in this game. He played a bit last week, and he should be fully starting this week. And with Rourke back there, the Ohio offense is very good. They can move the ball. He's probably the best quarterback in the MAC, if not, he's either first or second best. And the Bowling Green offense, while it is a significant downgrade from Ohio's, they can move the ball. Like I only need them to put up, say, 14 while Ohio puts up 30 at 31 field goal, 4 touchdown field goal. I think that's very doable. I think Ohio should win this game comfortably, like by a touchdown or two, but I think they score 30, 35 points in this game.
Yeah, I think this is 100% based on how Nathan Rourke plays. Like if he's 100%, if he's actually playing the way that we know he can, like he did last year, then I think it's just an easy cover and an easy over. But if he comes out slow, or if they try to take it easy and they, do a little bit of like maintenance or preventative maintenance on him in terms of like handing the ball off or short passes and just try to just squeak out a win, then it might be rough. But I do like the pick though. I'll probably end up tailing that. But what you got, Mike?
Yeah, I like that pick too. I think this is a little bit of an overreaction to the regional rivalry and how well Bowling Green did against Michigan last week. But I think that over is a safe one. I got Michigan State versus Maryland over 52.5. So Michigan State's offense last week was anemic, but I don't think that's going to continue. They put up 45 against Richmond. Maryland's been scoring 40 every single game. Michigan State's defense is Swiss cheese. Charlotte put up 30 on Maryland. Not Virginia, bad example. But I think these are both bad defenses, and their offenses have some talent and firepower. I think Talia Tagovailoa is going to throw it all over Michigan State secondary, and Michigan State's going to be playing catch up. I think easy this 52.5 is covered.
Yeah, I think my biggest scare of this is honestly, like you said, just Michigan State's offense being anemic. I think Maryland will put up probably 30 something points, but I would just be hoping Michigan State hits 14, 17, maybe 21 in order for you to be able to cover this. But no, it's a good pick. I got for my over, I have Army at Syracuse over 51.5. It seems like a little bit of a weird line just reading these two teams and seeing, Syracuse, seeing Army and just assuming points. But so far this season, they've both put up a lot of points. Army's offense looks incredibly different than it has in years past, and they're throwing the ball a lot. I think they put up 40 in 2 of the games so far this year. Syracuse had a huge week last week. I've also, taking into account that they're both giving up a decent amount of points, and I think this is surprisingly going to be a little bit of a shootout. I'm hoping both teams get in the 30s, but 51.5, I think they're going to be able to cover, because I think there's going to be some late scoring with some big plays for both sides.
I'm kind of interested in the spread in this game, because this Army team is good. Them being dogs by 2 touchdowns interested me a little bit. I didn't end up betting it, but that spread interests me.
I came real close to making this my my pick for my getting points, because I think it's 13.5 officially.
Yeah.
And to me, if it was 14 or any more, I thought that was a lock. So, but I think Army could put up some points. So I could see Army putting up 20 something points, and that means Syracuse is going to be throwing the ball all over the field.
Is it at the Carrier Dome?
It's at Syracuse, yeah.
Okay, West Point's not that far from there, so they're gonna travel well. That's gonna be a fun game, I think.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a super fun game. I have to like rewire my brain when I see Army and then like in the 50s, and I'm like, and I look back, I'm like, oh wait, I saw Army throw more passing touchdowns this year than they have in the last 15. So let's move on to our under. I'll go first with mine. I have SMU and TCU under 64. This is my fraud bowl. I think both of these teams are not who we thought they were. We mentioned TCU in terms of Colorado beating them week 1, and how we all kind of thought they shouldn't be ranked. It was based on mostly last year. TCU has not really looked like a good football team to me. I think they're towards the bottom of the Big 12. And SMU, I was very, very high on going into the season. And I'm still high on SMU, but I thought their offense was going to be explosive with Preston Stone at quarterback, and they've turned out to just be a regular offense and still winning some games. But I just, I can't see this. When I saw this line, I gasped. I was like, this is not getting into the 60s. I think this is going to be a 28-24 game or something like that. So what do you guys think? Matt, I'll go to you first.
I agree. I think TCU is still getting a lot of credit as the offense they were last year and not as the offense they've actually performed. Like, yes, they put up 42 on Colorado, but that Colorado defense is very rough, especially if your team can run the ball at all. They don't have really any juice on the D-line. So I like that pick a lot.
Yeah, Colorado just gave up how many points, like 34 points or whatever, to Colorado State, and they're a terrible team. So, but I'll move over to you, Mike, for your under pick for this week.
All right, I got Boise State at San Diego State under 45. So San Diego State against FBS teams this year has scored 20 against Ohio, 10 against UCLA, and 9 against Oregon State. And Boise State's defense is very, very good. I still go back to the Matt's pick in week 1 against Washington. Watching the first half of that game, that Boise State defense is very good. And Boise State's offense isn't any world beater or anything like that. That UCF game was 18-16 or whatever it was. So I think this is well under 45.
Yeah. I like that pick a lot, especially since both teams would rather run the ball really than throw the ball. Yeah. I have a similar kind of analysis of my pick. So Southern Miss against FBS teams has put up 3 and 13 against Tulane and FSU. Arkansas State against FBS teams has put up 3 and 0 against Memphis and Oklahoma. And this total is somehow at 49. Yes, the defenses haven't been great for either team, but I think they're both bad offenses. I don't think either team can really move the ball at all. So I'd be shocked if this game gets into the 40s. I think this total should be at like 41 or 42.
I actually really like this pick. I might just honestly parlay all 3 of our unders.
I was just thinking the same thing. I was like, I really like all 3 of these.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to our favorite. So who we got giving points this week? I'll start with you, Mike. Who's your favorite? You kind of hinted at it before, but lay it on us.
I got Bama by a touchdown over Ole Miss. It's at Bryant-Denny Stadium. They experimented against South Florida, and I think you saw the frustration with Nick Saban. You hear all the pundits saying, "Hey, Alabama's not that good," including George Novak saying, they're rudderless or whatever the comment was. But he's going to post that stuff in the locker room. It's like the anti-rat poison for him. I think they're going to give Ole Miss a shellacking.
Yeah, I just think Alabama's going to play bully ball. I could see this game even just going under and then just pushing down the field and just not giving up any points. But I do actually like this pick. I was debating this pick. I just watching Jalen Milroe. If he makes bad mistakes, then the 7 points goes out the window. So I'm not 100% confident in that, but I just think Alabama's better than Ole Miss. I do like Jackson Dart for Ole Miss though. I was super high on him last year. I thought he would turn the corner. He's starting to this year. but I haven't fully bought back into him. So I'll see what he does against a good defense. But Matt, who do you like? How do you like that pick, and who do you got for your favorite this week?
I like that pick. I think they should be able to run the ball on them all day long, really. I have Kentucky minus 13.5 at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is like they are 2-2, so the record looks respectable, but they're 0-4 against the spread to start the year, and they haven't really been close to covering it except for in one game against Arkansas A&M, which sure. But Kentucky's looked really good, and their offense has seemed more willing to put up points, especially with Devin Leary under center instead of whoever they had last year. But they're throwing the ball a lot more now, especially with Chris Rodriguez gone as well. So they're a team that can put up points. They're going to throw the ball a lot, and they should be able to throw the ball pretty easily on the Vanderbilt defense. And also, Vanderbilt just kind of sucks.
I don't know how I feel about this game. I do like Devin Leary. I do think they can put up points. The whoever Will Levis, totally forgettable guy, but no, I do like Kentucky. I just something about Vanderbilt this year is like a little. They're like sneaky, scrappy to me, and it freaks me out when I see them in double digit underdogs, especially to a team like Kentucky that I just don't see Kentucky like stomping on anyone's throat and running away with the game by 2 touchdowns. So, but no, I don't know. I think it's probably a pretty good pick. I would believe in Devin Leary more than I believe in Vanderbilt's offense, though. My favorite this week, I hinted at it before. I am absolutely hammering Oregon minus 21 at home against Colorado. We mentioned Travis Hunter being out. I think that's devastating to the team, both offensively and defensively. He's one of the best players in the entire nation on both sides of the ball. I think the emotional letdown after, or the emotional, roller coaster and come down after last week is massive. And when you really dig into it, Colorado, I think this is kind of the realization and wake up call. And this is, kind of the end of the road of the, the free to play in the FBS like ticket that they've had, because TCU, a little bit of a fraudulent team. I forget who they beat up on week 2, but then
Nebraska.
Oh, another fraudulent team. Matt Rule has not turned that program around, and Jeff Sims is just not the guy. And then I think Jeff Sims has 200 yards passing on the season so far, which is I don't even know how that's real. But but then if you really look at Colorado State, I think preseason Colorado State was 128th in the country out of 133 FBS teams. They're not a good football team. They have an atrocious defense. They're just not a good football team. And for Colorado to I'm not going to, shame them for storming the field, have fun in Boulder. You guys haven't had good seasons like recently, but I can't imagine that, you could feel good and warm and fuzzy, playing at Oregon, who is an absolute juggernaut on offense, and not having your best player on the field. Shedeur Sanders, great. I think he's going to play well, but I just think Oregon's going to put up, 65 points. I think Oregon might honestly cover the over just by themselves, but I think they're going to win this game by 35. What do you think, Mike?
I disagree. 21 points to a Power 5 conference team is a lot of points, and I understand the thought process, but Colorado has played up or down to their opposition every single game this year.
Their whole opposition has been down.
I don't think they're going to win. Like, don't hear me say that. But 21 points is too much for my britches.
If they win this game, we got to have a serious talk about Deion, because boy, would that be a coaching job if he wins this.
If he wins this game, we're leading the show with Deion, and I am 100. If I lose this pick, how about this? If I lose this pick, you guys could send me the, do you believe now memes from Deion, like all of his, writing and yelling at the all the reporters. I'll be one of the reporters. Do you believe now? Like I do think he's doing a good job. I think the team is good. They're turning around, but it's one thing to be turning around and play, mid-level FBS schools, but Oregon's legitimately going to be a top 10 team in the country going into the final week. So I just can't see this game being close. But enough about that. I'll eat the humble pie if it comes to me, if it's served to me next week, and Oregon doesn't cover. And then if they do cover, I'm going to send you guys the Bo Nix. This is the year he's really improved in this offense meme about 1,000 times. But let's move on to our underdog. I'll start with you, Matt. Who do you got for getting points this week?
I switched back and forth a couple times on whether I wanted my upset or my underdog to be one or the other pick. I ended up going with SMU plus 6.5 at TCU. We've talked a lot about TCU being a fraudulent program in this episode, but we're gonna keep doing it. That they just are not even close to the same team they were last year. The offense is significantly worse than the defense, which wasn't good last year and kind of relied a lot on turnover luck to be successful, is not having that turnover luck so far this year, and as a result hasn't been as good. They've beaten two teams, like a Houston team this is a bad Houston team. We saw in the Houston UTSA game. This is a team that took a step down from where it was last year, and then beat Nicholls State, which is sure you can beat Nicholls State. It's allowed. At SMU, we talked about Preston Stone. Preston Stone's been good to start the year. I think they have the better quarterback in this game by far, and I think they should be able to keep this one but within a touchdown.
Yeah, I absolutely love that pick. We talked about TCU a bunch. We talked about Preston Stone and SMU a bunch. I just think SMU is a better team. I think they're going to be able to score a bunch of points on TCU specifically, but I think I might, I like this game a lot. I'm debating switching my upset pick to this, but I'll talk that through when I get there. But what about you, Mike? What do you think about that pick? And then who do you got for your underdog?
I like that pick. I think TCU doesn't have an identity yet. They're still living on the parade from last year, but I've never really seen a turnaround in college football like how we've seen with that particular team going from a playoff team to a team. I don't know if they're going to make a bowl this year. But anyway, I like that pick, Matt. My pick is Cincinnati 14.5 versus Oklahoma. So Oklahoma really only played SMU so far, the dog to TCU, and they won by 16 points, I think. And that was at home. So we got Cincinnati at home. Cincinnati's defense is very good. Really, that Pitt game that they played them, that should have been 28-7 and ended. There were just a couple garbage touchdowns that brought it back up to 20 in the fourth quarter. But Cincinnati, they haven't lost their identity since Luke Fickell has left. They're a tough team. They're well coached, and I think it being in Cincinnati matters. Two touchdowns is a lot.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty tough pick. It being in Cincinnati, I think, is the kicker. What are you gonna say, Matt?
I liked this pick, and I probably would have made this pick if not for the Miami Ohio game with Cincinnati last week. Because losing to Miami Ohio team looked brutal against Miami Florida, which I still think is kind of a fraudulent ranked team. I love Tyler Van Dyke, but I don't think that team is what it is. So somehow losing to that team, even if it wasn't overtime, is iffy to me, and that's the only reason I didn't take this pick. But I like the thought process.
Yeah, this is the Dylan Gabriel, is he actually the guy game for me, because if he can cover 2 touchdowns against Cincinnati's defense, I think he's the guy. I do think Oklahoma wins, not particularly close, but I think the half point at 14.5, I think might matter here. I think so my underdog who I have this week, I have San Diego State +7 against Boise State. This is mostly in my mind. I know Mike, you're still super high on Boise State's defense. This is mostly in my mind just nobody in this entire game is going to score. Like, I think you have the under for this game, under 45. I think this game's going to be, this is going to be like a 17-14 game, and this is going to be an absolute rock fight. So I mostly have this because I do believe in Boise State's defense. I think San Diego State at home is a little bit more of an intimidating atmosphere that people give it credit for. And I think both teams are going to just run the ball and not really score a lot of points. And San Diego State's going to either score a garbage time touchdown or just keep it close and try and come down to the wire and win the game, and maybe come short, but still be able to cover the 7. So San Diego State +7 versus Boise State.
I like it.
Yeah, I like it just because I think it's going to be like you said, a 14-10, 17-14, something like that game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a gross rock fight of a game. Last not least for me, but not you guys, locks of the week. I'm going to go first here because I got to do something different than what I've been doing. 0-3 on locks is pretty brutal. I changed up my strategy a little bit. And today, when I was filling out our sheet, the first pick I put down, of course, was an over, but the first pick I put down was Iowa and Penn State over 40. And when I was going through my locks, I was like, this was just the first thing that came to my head. I got to go with this. I'm going back to the well of James Franklin hitting an over. When I saw the number at 40, even though it's Iowa, I was astonished. I don't think Penn State's really going to give up many points, but I think Penn State's legitimately going to put up 45 points on Iowa. And at home, they have a statement that they want to make, and Brian Ferentz is going to be completely desperate to put up any kind of points. So even if it's garbage time, he's keeping his offense on the field. If they score 10 points, I'm going to consider that a win on the Iowa side. I think Penn State scores at least 42, 45 points here. What do you guys think? Start with you, Mike.
You know, Penn State's got the longest streak in the nation of scoring 30 points or more at like 11 games or whatever it is. So you can guarantee 30 there. So if you get your Iowa 10, then you're golden.
Just need 10. Just need 10.
Yeah, I like it. I think Penn State's they're gonna. So just for everybody knows I'm a Penn State homer. The defense that Drew Aller, the Princeton's promise that Matt called him earlier in the year, which I really like and had been stealing. He is fantastic against zone defense. And what does Iowa play like solely as zone defense? He can split the levels, and they're going to tear that place apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Penn State should shred them. The only thing that scares me is Iowa might score 0 on this defense. It's the only thing that scares me there.
I legitimately came into my mind, but just, I was thinking maybe they might get garbage time, a score. Maybe they'll have a score at some fluke play or something. But yeah, I can very much see a world where Penn State covers this by themselves. So that's why I'm super confident in Brian Ferentz's contract. I know I've harped on it, and they did put up 41 last week, but I think he's still pretty close to that 25 number for an average. He's probably not going to get to 25 against Penn State, but if he gets 10 to 14 points, I'm considering it that they did their job for this over.
If he gets to 25, your over's hitting.
If he gets to 25, then this line is going to be 65. But I'll move over to you, Matt. What do you got for your lock of the week?
I have FSU -2.5 against Clemson, and I get this game's in Death Valley, but did Vegas watch Clemson play against Duke? Like,
I love this pick.
The only FBS team that Clemson has played against, they shouldn't have been on the field with Duke. Like, Duke's a good team, and they were a bit underrated going into that game. Like, Liam's had them ranked all year long, but they did not belong on the same field as Duke. Their D-line got pressure, but didn't sack Riley Leonard, I think, but once. And their O-line is good. It didn't allow a sack, but FSU's defense is on a different level than Duke's defense is. That's a substantial upgrade. And then their offense is every bit as good as Duke's. I think I'd be shocked if FSU wins this by less than one score. I think they win this by double digits, and I don't really understand why this game's at 2.5 beyond it being in Death Valley.
Yeah, no, I actually love this pick. I was looking at this pick too for just like my favorite, but it's pretty close to a pick'em game, which it absolutely should not be. I think you're right. I preseason thought Cade Klubnik was going to figure it out. Maybe it's just Dabo losing, his touch, his coordinators disappearing, and him not being able to figure it out. But yeah, I think FSU is just talented in every single aspect of the game, more so than Clemson. I don't think it being in Death Valley really moves the needle enough for it to be a less than that field goal game. So love this pick.
Dabo bringing in Garrett Riley and then making him run the normal Clemson offense should be absolutely criminal. That should be a fireable offense right there.
Yeah, for sure. Cade Klubnik is a monster 5-star recruit from Westlake, and you're just going to let him run the weird like RPO DJ Uiagalelei offense. Like, what are we doing here? But yeah, what about you, Mike? What do you got? Who's your favorite? Or your lock of the week?
I want to talk about FSU first. I think for anybody going out there who's looking for plus money, I think if you sell a few points here, I think it's a smart pick. I think that Vegas is probably reacting a little bit to Florida State's close win over Boston College, and some recency bias of the late 20 teens of Clemson being a powerhouse. I like that pick a lot, Matt. I got NC State at UVA under 47. I don't know if this is a sucker bet or what. I don't see NC State putting up more than 20 to 25 points. And UVA against Power Five opponents so far has not scored more than 2 touchdowns. If it's a sucker bet, I'm a sucker because I think there's no way this gets close to 47, especially being at UVA.
Yeah, I don't believe in these offenses at all. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. The NC State offense was bad with Devin Leary there, and then Brennan Armstrong came in. He just still hasn't been the same guy he was in 2020. I think he has 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. I think both these quarterbacks either have the same amount of interceptions or less or more interceptions than touchdowns. So this should be an ugly game.
Yeah, no, I like this too. I think this is going to be an atrocious game. I was looking at this for my under, but yeah, I love all these locks. I love them so much. I was just on the fly adjusting my parlay that we'll talk about later to add Florida State because I love it so much. But let's move on to our true upsets. So those are our 5 picks: lock of the week, over, under, favorite, and underdog. And then this is where we try to make a little bit of extra money. So who do we got that's a legitimate upset? So something plus 130 or more. So give what do you think the upset is and what the plus money is. I'll start with you, Mike. Who do you got for a true upset this week?
I got Virginia Tech at Marshall. So I understand Virginia Tech hasn't looked super stellar. Their defense is still pretty darn good. And defense travels, right? So you got Brent Pry as the coach of Virginia Tech, Charles Huff at Marshall. They have a history together. They've coached together for like 10 years. So Brent Pry is going to know, and Charles Huff is an offensive-minded coach. So they played against each other for a long time on different staffs, including Penn State. So like they know each other. And I think Virginia Tech's going to keep this thing close, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they pull the upset. I think plus 164 is great value there.
Yeah, I like that because Marshall hasn't really played anybody. They played a really close game against UAlbany. I think they barely won by like a field goal. It was a close game, and then I think ECU, the other team they played, who they beat pretty comfortably, but ECU is a significant step down from where Virginia Tech is.
I'll move over to you, Matt. What do you got for true upset this week?
I talked about it earlier, and I switched back and forth between SMU and Notre Dame here because I think both of them could win their games. But I went with the safer pick for my upset. I went with Notre Dame. We talked about it earlier. I just think they're the better team overall than Ohio State is. I think their line's better. I think their offense or their quarterback is better. The receivers, obviously, you're not beating Ohio State at wide receiver, but I think their defense is every bit as good Ohio State, if not better. So I think just overall they're a better team than Ohio State is at this point.
I tend to disagree. I'm a little bit of an Ohio State homer, just because of family connections there. But I think Ohio State is trending in the right direction, and this is really their figure it out game. My fear, though, is Ohio State's offense isn't nearly clicking enough. Like if you watch them against Indiana, they were an ugly football team, but I think their defense is starting to fly around to the ball. They've gotten nastier in the past 2-3 weeks of the season, and I do think this should really be a pick'em game. But the fact that it's at the shoe is probably why it's like a field goal spread for Ohio State. But this is either the Sam Hartman's going to New York for a Heisman or Ohio State's going competing for a natty to me.
As someone who had the over in that Ohio State Indiana game, yeah, I watched that game. I watched that game very upset.
I mean, that was my first lock of the week for our podcast, is them minus like 30.5 or something. And
they scored 21 against Indiana.
Yeah, that was hideous. But no, I'm personally on the Ohio State side. I didn't believe enough to put it as one of my picks, but who knows? Maybe I'll be wrong. But my true upset of this week, I went back and forth between the SMU pick and this one. I think I'm going to lock it in, though. I'm locking in Purdue beating Wisconsin at home. Or Purdue at home, excuse me. But Purdue versus Wisconsin, it's plus 180. I think that's really, really good value for a Purdue team that's been underrated and has been playing pretty well. They're not really a superstar, team anywhere. They never really were, but I think people overestimated losing Aiden O'Connell and thought that the team would have a steeper drop off than they have. And I personally was on the Wisconsin bandwagon, like waving the flag, thinking Luke Fickell would bring them to the Big Ten title game, and they just have not looked that good. So I don't think they're playing the way they should be yet. I don't think he's turned the program around the way they should yet, and I don't think Tanner Mordecai is really going to be putting up too many points. And if you don't put up too many points and you allow Purdue to stay in the game, I think they're a scrappy enough team that they're going to be able to squeak one out. I think the line's 5.5, but to me, plus 180 just seems like good value for a game that's basically going to be a coin toss to me.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue there in Wisconsin is that Tanner Mordecai is just not the guy. Like,
I thought he was going to be good. I never thought he was like a superstar or a stud, but I thought he was going to be a significant upgrade for Wisconsin, but he seems to just be a little bit more of the same. But let's move on to our final segment, the parlays and teasers of the week. This is where we try and move the needle a lot, get some big money. Last week, Mike and I both won. I think mine was plus 595. Mike, I forget what yours was. I think it was somewhere in the high 200s.
Yeah, 250, I think, or something like that.
250, yeah. So good money, good value. Like I said, we're going to try and put together a graphic this week. If not this week, we'll do it next week. But for all of our picks, our records, obviously, but more importantly, where we are at units plus or minus, including all of these. So when you see these come out, we're going to be putting out the numbers and the plus signs next to our upsets and our parlays as well. So I'll start with you. Mike. What do you got for your parlay or teaser of the week?
Yeah, I went with two favorites and two dogs in buying and selling points. So, buying points, I should say. I got Rutgers plus 30 at Michigan. This has been a close game. The past couple of years, there's been a couple blowouts in the last 5 years, but for the most part, Rutgers has played Michigan pretty darn well. This Rutgers team is not bad. They're not good. Don't hear me say that, but they're not bad. And I don't think Michigan's clicking on all cylinders yet, but they're a darn good football team. But 30 points is a lot. We already talked about Penn State. I got them -9 as one of the legs against Iowa. I think that's an easy cover. Louisville -9 against BC. Boston College is definitely tired after last week with the close game against Florida State, and they also lost against Northern Illinois in week 1 for me, so I will never forget that. And then I bought a couple more points for Colorado at Oregon. 21 points is a lot. 26 points is even more. So I brought that up to 26 to get those 4 legs of a parlay together for plus 450 odds.
Plus 450 is good. That's a lot. And you got me on the train of buying points for some of these because I love that. It's got the teaser energy, but you still got the parlay odds there. But Matt, what do you got? What do you think about that? And what do you have for your parlay or teaser of the week?
I like that. Like we talked about the Colorado Oregon one. That's the only one that scares me. I have a little Colorado Oregon action in here too. I did a teaser this week. I lost my parlay for the first time last week, which was disappointing. So we're switching it up a little bit. We're with a 6-point teaser. So we have Oregon, Colorado. We have that over teased down to 64, which I like a lot. I think Oregon can cover this by themselves. And I think Colorado should be able to score on Oregon's defense as well. Their Oregon's defense is a little better than they were last year, but it's still not a good defense by any standard, really. So I think Colorado should be able to score on them. I have Texas Tech minus a half points, so basically a pick 'em against West Virginia, which I think Texas Tech is just a better team there. West Virginia's they look okay. They're better than they were previous years, but I think they're still not really quite on that upper tier Power 5 level. JMU minus a half point at Utah State. I've almost put this as my favorite pick. I don't really understand the line here. It's minus 6.5 is the actual line. I think JMU is a substantially better team than Utah State is. Utah State has a couple big wins this year, and I think that might be a slight overreaction to that, but JMU's one of the best FCS teams in the country, and I think they should win this comfortably. And then the last one is Western Kentucky versus Troy, the under 65, teased up from 59. I don't think the Western Kentucky offense is clicking the way it was. They just put up 10 against Ohio State, who we've talked about having a good defense, but Western Kentucky is being talked about as like a record-setting offense like they were a couple of years ago. I don't think it's the same offense. And I think Troy's defense is really, really good. And that's the biggest key in this. Their offense isn't special, but their defense is really good. So I think this stays under 65. And that's four-team teaser for 6 points. That is a plus 300.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good value. The Western Kentucky pick I like. they're another team again, like you said, like people thought they were going to be a record-setting offense. I think our preview for our conference preview had them as running away with the conference, and Austin Reed throwing for 1 billion yards or whatever. But no, I do like all of those. I've actually scooped one of those from mine. But parlay tease of the week, I'm doing a parlay. Mike's got me into the buying points trend and craze. So I bought some points for a couple of these, but Texas Tech money line, just straight up money line pick. I think they're just a much better team than West Virginia. I have Maryland minus 6.5. I now I'm forgetting who Maryland's actually playing, but I think Maryland's going to score. Oh yeah, Michigan State. But I moved them down to 6.5 because I think they're going to score by at least a touchdown. I think the line's 9. Penn State moved their line down a little bit for the home game against Iowa, but moved Penn State to 9.5. And then we already talked about Oregon, Colorado. I think Oregon's covering 21. For this parlay, I moved them down to 16.5. I think that's just going to cover easily. And then the final kicker, loved the Florida State pick earlier. So just adding the straight up line, Florida State minus 2.5 to this. So that's a 5-leg parlay, huge parlay. Maybe I'm getting a little cocky because I hit mine last week for, plus 495, but this is plus 1,001. So big odds here, but moved a couple of lines around for games that felt pretty confident in already, and we're potentially going to pick already. And I think this is a pretty solid parlay to throw just a couple bucks at, and maybe cover all the rest of your gambling for the rest of the week.
We really need that Colorado Oregon kind of to thread the needle between 16 and 26. We need that needle threaded.
We need that needle threaded, but also for the game to score like a total of 80 points.
Yeah, so like just like a 45-31 and everyone get behind that. That's
yeah, no, we that would be perfect. Like a 14-point victory that's just right. Or like like a
no. We need 49-31. 49-31.
Okay, I could buy 18. That. 18 is good. Well, I do have Oregon minus 21, so whatever. We'll maybe we'll do the math on that later. But no, I think we do need 80 points in this game too, just for everyone to go crazy and talk more about Deion Sanders.
I think that they said the most streamed college football game of all time now is Colorado State, which is a ridiculous statement going into this last year.
Yeah, it's out of control because I think they had like a total of 9,000 people average of their games for the last like 2 years for their home games. Yeah. So yeah, for that to be the most streamed game is incredible. It was an incredible game though. So like people that tuned in actually got their money's worth, and the fact that went to overtime and there's cheap shots and everything else that's happening, and that was a super exciting game. But we'll see if Colorado keeps it close. They're only going to get more eyeballs on them, especially if this game's at 3:30. So, all right, but I'll move over to you, Matt, for any other picks, any other things you want to throw out for this week to keep an eye on, maybe other things you got money on that you don't necessarily have in your picks.
I don't have a ton this week, mostly because I just kind of want to enjoy this kind of great slate of games we have. But I have Toledo minus 20.5 versus Western Michigan. This is the best. Toledo's the best team in the MAC, in my opinion. And Western Michigan's, if it wasn't for Kent State being the worst team in the country, they would be the worst. They're not a good team. So I think 3 touchdowns with Daquan Finn back there. I think they should cover that easily. And then Air Force minus 4.5 against San Jose State. I think this Air Force team is really good, and I think they should win this game by a touchdown. I think Air Force is kind of being underrated here a little bit.
Yeah, those are some pretty good picks. I like both of those. San Jose State, I always I gotta reset my brain because I just think of them as like a really good running team, and they play decent defense. But those days have gone a little bit since the past couple of years. But what do you got, Mike?
I got a couple things that Matt has on his docket already. I think that Notre Dame Ohio State game should be a pick 'em game. So I have Notre Dame money line plus 130, plus 136. I think it was up top. Florida State, like I said, I think people should sell some points and maybe go to 4.5 or 5.5 for this one. And then Utah, the current line is -4. I think I would take it up to as much as 7 if Cam Rising is going to play. Being at Utah, like that's a very, very tough place to play, and they're going to make the decision I read before on Thursday. So check your Twitter feed or X feed on Thursday. And if Cam Rising is playing, I would take whatever line that is until 7 or so.
I would love to see how quickly this line changes as soon as they announce like Cam Rising is playing, because I do think it's going to jump up to a touchdown. But yeah, no, that should be a good game at least though. And then a couple of games I had my eye on, I'll just kind of rattle them off because we've talked about a couple of these. But Middle Tennessee -3 versus Colorado State. I just think the emotional letdown from last week. I think Colorado State's just going to lay an egg, and I just don't think they're really a good football team. I love Missouri -6.5 versus Memphis. Being at Memphis, I don't really think that's much of an advantage, but I think Missouri's a pretty underrated team. They won me somebody last week, and I think them being less than a touchdown favorite is good. We already talked about Army plus 13.5 at Syracuse. I think this is going to be surprisingly a shootout of a game. But I think Army's going to keep it close enough, and hopefully, they hit my over that I talked about above. Mike, I know you love Akron. Akron plus 16.5 at Indiana. I think Indiana is not a good football team, and Akron's up and coming better football team, and keeping this within 2 scores is good. I do love myself Ohio State -3. South Carolina -6.5 at Mississippi or versus Mississippi State. Spencer Rattler, I think he's played very, very, very well, and I think I'm already excited for the overreaction and all the talk about him going in the first round. I don't think he's a first-round quarterback, but I think he will be talked about in the way Will Levis was talked about, where people just say, "Oh, look at his arm, look at all the things he could do, look at this senior year he had after he lost starting jobs multiple times." I think Spencer Rattler is going to be. He's going to show out a little bit against Mississippi State. And then the last one is Texas Tech -6 versus West Virginia. I have them in my parlay for just the money line, but I think Texas Tech is just a much better team. So them -6, I think, is just a pretty good game, a pretty good pick in and of itself.
Is Tanner Green out for that one?
I'm not sure.
I know he was out for the backyard brawl. And they squeaked that one out, but if he's out, I'm surprised that line's that low.
Yeah, I'm surprised that line's low, and then also it's similar to the Colorado State games. I think like the backyard brawl is just an emotional roller coaster for both those teams, and I have like I'm brewing a take right now of betting on like some of these teams to come out flat after these huge emotional games or emotional wins that they have against a rival or a really, really physical team that they hate. So hoping that makes me some money with Texas Tech -6.
I really like the Missouri and Army picks there. I was close to putting Missouri on mine as well.
Yeah. All right, so those are our picks. We got our 5 picks that we're tracking for the week with our lock, over, under, favorite, and underdog. And then our money-making picks with the upsets and the parlay and teaser. So feel free to fade us, to follow us. If Mike keeps on his trend, he'll be 5-0 this week. So parlay all of his picks together. But we'll get up our graphic. The podcast will be up for the start of the Friday games, and then we'll get our graphic up the morning right before game day for everyone to take a look at and to put themselves on the gambling map with us. So love to hear your thoughts, and from all of us here, Transfer Portal Gambling Podcast, is George, Matt, and Mike. See you next week.